Titans, go!
Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. I'm Charles Skaggs, once again back in Titans Tower to talk some Titans. See how that works? Titan Talk, Talking Titans. I'm here, of course, with my partner in crime and everybody's favorite fellow Titan talker, Jesse Jackson. Say hi, Jesse.
Hello, Charles. Good to see you. Excited to talk a little Titans, and we are not alone in the tower today, are we?
No. We finally have our first guest here on Titan Talk, and it's a very special guest. We have Phil Perich, that Cape and lunatic himself.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be here with you, Charles and Reverend Jackson.
Thank you very much. If you've listened to podcasts on the Southgate Media Network, you have heard Phil's voice many times.
Yeah, he's all over the place. I don't know when he sleeps or has a marriage or what. So I don't know what's going on there.
What is sleep?
Yeah.
What I don't understand is, with as much podcasting as you do, how do you have time to see the shows that you're podcasting about?
Again, what is sleep?
Okay, there you go. Okay. Very nice.
They have pills for that. I know this because I take them. But thank you so much for filling in or helping being a part of the podcast, Phil. We really appreciate it, and thanks for being our first guest. This is kind of awesome. So, and hopefully there's no jealousy between you and Jesse, because I know that you get a little iffy because when we have the Phantom Zone podcast, that you're like, well, Jesse, you always go to Jesse first.
Oh no, I'm not jealous. I know Jesse's the superior podcaster.
Well, just don't take it personally. I've known Jesse over 20 years, so it's nothing.
Yeah,
Jesse's family as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Yeah. For those of you, this is your first Titan Talk podcast. Please go back and listen to the other three, so you'll figure out what we foolish people are talking about. But this is the podcast about the DC universe Titans. We are specifically looking forward to talking about the TV show coming up. But our hope from this podcast is to talk about all variations of that team of that Charles and I think Phil affectionately call the Teen Titans, based on the groundbreaking, wonderful Wolfman Perez era. So we're excited to have our guest, and take it away, Charles.
Okay, so obviously we want to talk some Titans today, probably in honor of Phil, because we know that Phil is a serious Nightwing fan.
No, really?
Just a little bit. Just the fact that you're wearing a Nightwing shirt has nothing to do with it.
On my social media, no.
Exactly. Yeah, and your Nightwing PDP accounts and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, no fandom there. So obviously you're a perfect fit for this, because today we're going to talk about the Robins, as in the four Robins that have had associations with the Teen Titans, the various incarnations of the group over the years. So that means a certain Dick Grayson, Jason Todd a little bit, Tim Drake, and the current Robin, Damian Wayne, I want to talk about. So I think we'll break this into 4 segments, one for each Robin, obviously. and I want to get everybody's thoughts. So let's start right off the bat with a certain Richard John Grayson, a.k.a. Dick Grayson, the very first Robin. So Phil, I want to talk about what you, obviously being a big Nightwing fan, I'm sure you got some strong feelings about this. And I want to get your thoughts on Robin, who became Nightwing, of course, later on in Tales of the Teen Titans number 44, way back in the day. And I want to get your thoughts on Dick Grayson's relationship with the Titans, if you would. So any thoughts on that, Phil?
Well, it's pretty funny because, of course, my first exposure to Dick Grayson was, reruns of 66 Batman, Super Friends. Then I got into the comics, and I didn't run into him first in Teen Titans. I got into a few appearances of Nightwing and Batman, and then I was like, oh wait, this is interesting. And then I went back. I got his Tales of the New Teen Titans 44, a bunch of back issues. Yeah, but I think what really cemented the fandom was that first Chuck Dixon ongoing series.
Right. Yes. Yeah, that was a great run.
Oh yeah.
Those first 60 issues were brilliant. So I really enjoyed that. Jesse, how about you? What was your first introduction into the world of Robin the Boy Wonder, who became Robin the Team Wonder, and then ultimately Nightwing?
Well, I am old enough to remember the original Batman series on its original run. I can actually remember we lived in Lake Charles, Louisiana when my dad was in Vietnam, watching the season where Batgirl had joined the show.
Right.
So, God love Burt Ward. He just was, for this little, short, fat kid, he was the coolest thing ever. He got to hang around, with Batman. He made a lot of fun puns.
Now, did you identify more with Robin than you did Batman?
Absolutely. And
because he was younger and
yes,
more relatable.
Right. And so then, reading the comic books, I was always, I enjoyed Batman and Robin. Superman was my go-to character, but I absolutely loved these old, the campy late 60s, early 70s, Batman and Robin episodes. And so I've always had a soft place for Dick Grayson, and the idea that this character had just a tragic origin story as his mentor, yet it didn't make him this broody, depressed guy. It made him, he just still found a way to have joy in his heart and to enjoy that part of being a circus performer. And as they've expanded his mythos, I've really loved that. So, yeah, I'm a big Dick Grayson fan, and was kind of looking forward to talk a little bit more of his journey. Now, I know
we can do that. I've got a nice little rundown of my copious notes here.
I know Wally West in The Flash is your favorite character, so you may be in
and Barry Allen,
you may be a little bit out of your depth here, but in depth, I mean,
I see how it is, Jackson.
No.
Shots fired.
Yeah, exactly. Calling me out right here.
Well, depth is the wrong word. This may be out of your comfort zone because this isn't one of your favorite characters. That's what I meant. Where do you rank?
He's up there.
Okay,
but,
he is.
I'd say he's probably top 10, maybe at least top 15, maybe top 10. So he's definitely up there.
So you do not feel? I'm sorry, I'm hijacking as I often do. You do not feel there is a.
He calls me out and he hijacks the podcast. What's up with that, people? I asked.
Yeah, there isn't a kind of competition between Robin and Wally. You do not feel that. You just feel like they're both unique in their own ways.
No, and one of the things that over, like, I would say since the 90s probably, they've worked really hard to kind of show their best friends, Wally West and Dick Grayson.
I think if there's any competition, it's between Dick Grayson and Roy Harper.
Right. Well, to be fair, Roy Harper has conflict with just about everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So, because, yeah, it's Roy Harper. So, enough said there.
Okay,
but,
yes.
But yeah, so as far as Robin, like you, both of you, my first exposure was the Batman TV show. I remember watching it at like 3 and 4, watching reruns in my parents' house. You know, got the Mego action figures with the whole cool Batman, you know, cave play set, and that was cool back in the day. But you know, then I was reading Batman comics very young, so that, and of course later, like toward when I was around 10 or so, I started getting into the Teen Titans. So he was there. So he's kind of like my go-to character from Batman into the Teen Titans. You know, just I really like the character, but the character really didn't really click for me until the Wolfman Perez era. That whole sequence, like, was starting with New Teen Titans Volume 1, number 39, where he and Wally essentially give up their identities. Now, Wally goes to leave the Titans to go off with Francis Kane, Magenta. But, you know, Dick still kind of kept ties with the group because obviously he was romantically involved with Starfire. And we got to see him a little bit on his own until that moment where I think it was Tales of the Teen Titans number 42 when Deathstroke crashes through his office window and kind of sets him on the path of like, well, hey, I need a new secret identity since I gave up being Batman. And he assumed that role of Nightwing. And from that point on, he became a really great character, favorite character of mine, and has kind of been that way ever since. So I've been a fan of Nightwings, obviously, through, like, you know, the disco Nightwing era with the high collar, all the way through the Chuck Dixon era to the present day. And so, yeah, he's great. And obviously he's been the Titan that's been with the group the most, because if you notice, in some form or another, except for maybe, you know, in recent years, that Dick Grayson has always been a member of the Titans team. He was there in the 60s incarnation, the 70s incarnation, the 80s incarnation. He was in the Titans group when they all reformed as adults. And again, now these, you know, today in this current Titans incarnation. So yeah, he's obviously had a strong relationship and has kind of been probably more than anybody else, like the definitive Titan, I would say. Anybody's thoughts on that one?
I was gonna ask you, and I think you kind of answered this, Charles, but Jesse, so like Charles, did the character click for you more once he became Nightwing, or were you like on board from like day one as Robin?
So I've always loved Robin, and I knew that if I remember my emotions correctly, you know, during that run of the Teen Titans, when he's trying to figure out what he's going to be, and when he comes up with Nightwing, I remember kind of having, for those that remember, a V8 moment, you know, like, wow, you know, because
what's V8, Grandpa?
Yeah, I loved the old Tales from Krypton, and I loved when Superman and Jimmy Olsen would go into the bottle city of Kandor, and they would be, you know, they would be their version of Batman and Robin, Nightwing and Sunbird, I think, right?
Flamebird,
thank.
Yes, yeah.
I knew, and so, and I remember, and I don't know in new continuity, and I get really tired head thinking about that. But back then, I remember him saying that this honored both legacies. And because in the old days when Batman and Superman were friends, it was almost Uncle Clark. He didn't call him that, but the concept was he felt of him like another father figure, a beloved uncle. And so that was just, this is perfect. It is, and so since then, I still think in terms of how perfect a story and someone picking a costume and an identity, that's easy, top 5.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right, so why don't we run down some of the highlights of Dick Grayson before we move on? Because obviously he's been such a key member of the Titans over the years. So I thought it might be good to kind of go over some of the highlights with the group. Obviously, we had Brave and the Bold number 54 back in 1964, where he, Robin, Kid Flash, and Aqualad formed the team. And then we had DC Comics Presents number 26 in 1980, where this is where Jesse and I, being Titan talkers from back in the day, got into the group big time, because this was the formation of the new Teen Titans for their first appearance, even though they didn't really start forming together until the actual series. This is more like a teaser. And we had like Raven invading Dick Grayson's dreams and to bring the team together, because she knew that, I think that he was that key component to bringing the group back together. And we had, obviously later on, he got involved with Starfire romantically, and had that great issue, New Teen Titans number 38, where he helped Donna Troy try to figure out the truth about her past.
Who is Donna Troy?
Who is Donna Troy, which is a classic issue. And it showed that great friendship that Dick Grayson and Donna Troy had.
Yes. If
you remember that issue. We talked about New Teen Titans 39, where he gave up his identity and then eventually got the Nightwing persona. When the books went to the deluxe series, the volume 2 of New Teen Titans, apparently he ended up, there was a civil war on Tamaran, because Starfire, if you remember, got told that she has to marry this Prince of Tamaran and named Karis, and which kind of pretty much put the brakes on their relationship. So we had that. We had Secret Origins Annual number 3, which I thought was a great issue, where again we have Dick Grayson's dreams being invaded, only this time by the Antithesis, and that was a great excuse to kind of go throughout Titans history, which I really liked. I don't know if either of you read that issue, but it's a great issue. It was kind of a good post-crisis rundown of the Titans history, which I liked. We had New Titans number 100, where after getting back together, Nightwing and Starfire came this close to getting married. Didn't quite work out, because we had, for lack of a better word, Dark Raven interrupting the wedding. And then we had, shortly thereafter, the Titans, the original Titans, kind of reformed as their adult versions in the first Titan series. And they got their own headquarters and their own Titans Tower and whatnot, once again, which was great. Then that book went away after 50 issues, and then they brought it back for another couple of years. And then that led us into, recently, into the Titans Hunt miniseries, which we, here in 2015, which Jesse and I talked about recently here on this program. So Jesse, or Phil, have you read any of the Titans Hunt issues and the Titans, from the Titans from the Rebirth era?
Yeah, I'm reading all. I read Titans Hunt. I've read all the current stuff, and yeah, I've basically been like there every month for the Titans, at least since that like that late '90s series, the Devin Grayson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Jesse, how about you? Was there any highlights from the Robin being with the Titans or Nightwing being with the Titans that stuck out in your mind?
I love the fact, I remember when they strongly implied that he and Corey were sleeping together. That was a little...
Which is pretty rare back in the day.
It was rare back in the day. I've always liked the idea...
Usually it was like Daredevil was the only one getting action back in the 80s.
Exactly. And the leadership he did, making it clear that he was in charge of the Titans. So all those, I never had a problem with him dating Corey. I thought it was nice. Shout out to some of our members of Titan Talk. We did fan fiction, and there'd be scenes where, he dated Kara, Supergirl, which I always thought was kind of fun. And then I always was a big fan of him and Barbara Gordon together. But I liked how the Titans were a family, and I liked how he kind of was the leader. So I think all of those are great examples. As I've told you, I'm not a big fan of the new series, and I think that has more to do with me than it does the series. I may have just not... I'm just not in the mood to read comics as much as I used to be. So, but
which is a crime.
I know. I know.
I don't think it's you, Jesse. I know what you're saying. I'm still reading them, but that's my whole problem with them since the New 52 on, especially with the Titans. I think they butcher a lot of that history, so it doesn't feel quite the same. Like the whole Cyborg thing, since New 52, Cyborg hasn't been part of the Titans. And it just feels like there's this big gap there,
Yeah, and
well, that may change because they are talking about with the upcoming revamping of the Justice League series and the Teen Titans and Titans series going on kind of a hiatus. We don't know what's going to follow this No Justice miniseries by Scott Snyder. So we'll see how it shakes out.
They put out a black and white image of that. Snyder's Justice League, and I believe Cyborg was in that shot. So
right, but the question is, so were other members like Corey and Wally?
Oh no, it was Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Flash. It was I think it was the Jon Stewart Green Lantern.
Oh, I see. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
Cyborg, Martian Manhunter, and I think was it Hawkgirl?
Right. If only more than one character. If only comic book characters could be on more than one team at once. Like Wolverine,
Spider-Man. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, Spider-Man. So
Batman. Yeah.
It's possible you could do double duty.
Yeah, and I just hearing you guys talk about it gives me tired head.
He's a grumpy old fan.
I am grumpy old fan. I just
We'll see. I think that's where DC fails, where Marvel kind of succeeds, because Marvel kind of doesn't retcon stuff. Well, DC tries not to do it anymore, but Marvel, they just slide the time. First, Tony Stark might have been in Korea or the Vietnam. Now it's Afghanistan. They just slide that time forward instead of rebooting stuff.
They just do new number ones every 20 issues.
Yeah.
Well, Superman's doing that soon.
Yeah.
Well, but that was after 45 issues. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just...
Not quite as bad.
And if I could just get on a slight rant, and then we'll get back to the Titans. I remember when John Byrne took over Superman, and they made this big deal about it, and they're going to change the origin. And then, then he barely stayed 2 or 3 years. I actually wrote a letter to DC saying, you gave all this up, and then he's gone that quickly. And then we kept... and then Mark Waid did Birthright, and every 6 to 7 years, well, it's time to redo the origin, and it just after a while you're like, I don't care anymore.
Well, they're doing that now They're doing it now with Brian Michael Bendis. I mean, they got big 2-page ads in every issue. It's like, Bendis is coming.
Yep. I mean, everybody has their, I think, as far as Superman, I know we're kind of digressing from the Titans talk here, but with Superman, everybody has they want to do their own take on the Superman origin. Now, and with Bendis coming on, it's like John Byrne when he took over back in the 80s.
Right.
Because they're keeping Action Comics and they're just relaunching Superman out of a miniseries, just like Byrne did back in the day. And
the reason why they keep jacking with what are the Titans. I mean, I kept looking at, and I liked the Justice League movie. I enjoyed it, but I'm going, there's no way Cyborg should be in a Justice League movie. You know, and the cynical me, did they need an African American? I just don't get why you're doing this. And so I feel like there was a time when if there was a Titan book being published, I was going to buy it. If there was a Legion of Superheroes book, I was going to buy it. And now then, I picked these up because we're doing the podcast, which is sad.
Well, hopefully hopefully there's something you can get out of it. Hopefully.
Yes, I hope so.
All right. So, probably time to move on to our next topic. I think so. All right. So let's talk about a certain Jason Todd, who did, even though he wasn't technically a full-fledged member, although he was like maybe a member of the New Teen Titans for like all of 2 issues, but he did have some experiences with the Titans, and I kind of wanted to run through that a little quickly. Now, obviously, Jason Todd, for those who don't know, created in 1983 by Gary Conway and Don Newton. First appeared in Batman Volume 1, number 357 back in the day, and then eventually had his origin revamped in number 408 because it was way too much like Dick Grayson's. Essentially, he was a Dick Grayson clone to start off. And then he got it revamped so that he was more like a street hoodlum that Batman takes in because he doesn't want Jason to go down that dark path. He sees him as redeemable. And so, which I think is a much better origin for Jason.
At least more original.
Yeah, exactly. At least more original. More original. You're right. Now, he did join the team briefly in New Teen Titans Volume 2, number 20 and 21. That was in 1986, where we had Cheshire, one of the Titans' nemesis, and occasional mother of Leanne Harper, depending on your continuity, Roy Harper's daughter. And Cheshire was battling the New Teen Titans. Nightwing was not with the group at this point. So Wonder Girl was kind of leading the group. And she brought in Jason Todd as kind of like to help out because she was kind of like needed kind of like an ad hoc group to fight Cheshire here. And so Jason was one of her recruits. Jason at this point was like kind of getting some pressure because everybody kind of looked to Robin to lead the team. And here he wasn't the experienced hero. So, Jesse, do you remember this?
I do remember that now that you mention it. And I remember being struck how cool that was, that he was self-aware to know that. Right. And I read this was years ago, that when Chris was very little, that parents tend to, without thinking, if you're in a group of kids, the tallest kid you think is the most mature, and you tend to go to them to say, hey, can you take lead or something, just because of the height, and that may be horribly, a bad decision. I remember liking that. Jason Todd gets a lot of grief. I hated that they changed his origin that quickly. Think through that if you wanted to. If you're going to do this, let's come up with it right. He does have, I think, one of my great scenes of all time in, what do you get the man who has everything? And
that was a great issue with Superman Annual number 11 by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons.
And so Wonder Woman says, "Oh, we better get inside the fortress because you two must be cold." And he looks over at Batman. "We're cold? Clean thoughts, chum," or something. He makes so, and then of course,
because with Wonder Woman showing more leg than Jason Todd was, practically.
Yes, indeed, yes, showing more skin of everything.
Yeah,
So, I think that was, an interesting story, and I was glad they talked about it. That, in sports we follow the uniforms more than we do sometimes the players, especially in modern era. We cheer for the laundry, as they say. So, in this case, they were following the laundry. So,
all right, Phil, were you at all a fan of the Jason Todd Robin back in the day?
Like I had a little bit of exposure to him, pre-crisis, but most of it was, after the new origin. And I mean, at first I thought, oh, what a jerk this kid is, but he had the hardest job of all. He was the one right after Dick Grayson. And Dick Grayson was so capable and so skilled, and everyone just, I guess, expected this kid to be number one. Yeah.
Everybody loves Grayson, so so it kind of like they had that pressure.
Well, I think
of following him up.
I think they've made that metaphor in the comics before. He was like the Jan Brady.
Well, and also
Grayson.
He was almost the, you made all the mistakes, and so that way, when we go to the next Robin we'll talk about, they learned from everything they did wrong, so that it worked better. And as you know, there are no bad characters, there's bad writers. And so I think his stories were not very well. They kind of put him in a loop. And, of course, then the infamous Joker poll, people calling in, do you want Robin to die?
The 1-800 number, yes.
Yeah.
And apparently he was only killed off by like a couple of dozen votes difference.
Oh, I didn't know if it was a couple dozen or a couple hundred, but yeah, they said it was pretty close.
It was pretty close. So,
I love that story that no one expected them to have to kill him. They're like, what? Yeah. What do you mean?
The Joker won the popular vote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it was just more there were a lot of people who just hated Jason because he wasn't Dick Grayson's Robin that they grew up with. Because, comic book fans having a problem with change. That's never happened before as I look at, like, two people bothered by change right now.
Yes.
See what he did there?
I think that is a fair that's a fair thing against me. It's just, I think that's a really fair thing, and now that I'm a little embarrassed.
Yeah, but is there a difference? Is there a difference between, hating change for the sake of change or just like being, I don't think they're honoring the background or the story of this character?
Well, maybe I think it's just more that like maybe that sometimes like obviously with creative changes, the older generation isn't quite the key audience anymore. Mm-hmm. And so it's a fine line when you're redoing something like that, because personally I like it when they're faithful to what came before. And Jeff Johns is usually a writer that tries to incorporate elements of the past. He doesn't just throw it out like some writers do. They just want a clean slate.
And Charles, you and I easily
like with the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, one of my top 5 books, and could make the argument one of my could be top 2. The Starman series. James Robinson made a point of not retroconning. I mean, he included everyone and figured out a way to make it work.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so let's move on to a more major Robin in this group. Timothy Jackson Drake, Tim Drake himself, the third Robin. Created in 1989 by Marv Wolfman and Pat Broderick. Tim Drake first appeared in Batman Volume 1, number 436, became Robin in number 442, and then later joined the Teen Titans in Teen Titans Volume 3, number 1, written by the aforementioned Jeff Johns. So, and then he ended up becoming Red Robin later on because, hey, we want somebody else to be Robin, and we need to, like, kind of, you know, we can't have two Robins running around like we have two Flashes, but hey, you know, so, because God forbid people might get confused, especially with this, since they both have dark hair, I guess. Because I think that's one of our prerequisite for being Robin. You have to have jet black hair, right?
Batman has a type. Yeah.
He does have a type.
Batman does have a type.
At least with Damian, it makes sense because Bruce Wayne's son, and you know, so yeah, that at least makes sense. So Tim Drake kind of was first introduced to us during like a crossover between Batman and the New Titans series in A Lonely Place of Dying. So right off the bat, he always has a strong connection to the Titans because essentially Tim Drake was like a Dick Grayson fanboy.
Yes.
Who, you know, like, he kind of, like, was such a fan that he figured out that Dick Grayson was Robin and then became Nightwing. He solved his secret identity, and which, of course, meant he knew who Batman was. So that he used that knowledge to kind of work his way into their confidence, ultimately leading to where he became Robin and took over since Jason Todd at the time was pushing up the daisies and joined the Bleeding Choir Invisible. So, Phil, what did you think of Tim Drake?
I have a special relationship with Tim Drake. He's probably my second favorite Robin.
Okay.
Because I was reading Batman at the time when they first introduced Tim Drake. What was he, like 12 or 13? I think him and I were about the same age.
Right.
So that should tell you how aging works in comic books. I'm going to be 40 in a couple of weeks here, and Tim Drake's still, you know, probably not even 20 yet. But
it gets worse as you get older.
Oh, I know. It feels horrible being older than most of your fictional heroes.
See, you should have been a fictional character when you were growing up.
That's true. But so I've been there since the beginning of Tim Drake's, you know, career. Yeah. And I let you mention that Red Robin series. I love that Red Robin series.
Yeah, I did too. I thought it was good. Jesse, any thoughts on Tim Drake?
So, as I talked about a few minutes ago, they learned their lesson and they did everything right.
Yeah.
They made Tim Drake very different. They made that he was more cyber friendly.
More likable.
Yeah, very likable. They made him, excuse the sports talk for a moment, but I remember 27 years ago when the Cowboys drafted Troy Aikman, they said the first thing they should do is go have him set up a tent in Roger Staubach's yard so that he can get used to living under Staubach's shadow. And, you know, kind of as a joke. Well, I think they did that with Tim Drake. The first thing they did as writers is they made Dick Grayson bless him and like him and treat him as a little brother. And so, therefore, the audience is going, well,
I guess he's okay.
Yeah, if Mr. Grayson likes him,
he didn't steal the job. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's very good to know. I loved a lot of the stories of how he got training, and he had his own father, so it wasn't like you had the whole controversy of, you know, why didn't Bruce adopt Dick? He was just a ward, and and all this, the drama that some of the fandom had. He was cool in his own way. He seemed to have his own. He created his own cast. Had his own kind of unique girlfriends. So yeah, Tim Drake is is a good character, and I think to a lot of people, he's their Robin, right?
Yeah.
Especially, that is when they say Robin, I'm always going to think Dick Grayson, but I think that there are plenty of people that are going to grow up that, just like Wally West is the Flash, Tim Drake is Robin.
Yeah, I mean, he came on the scene in the 90s. So you figure anybody that was growing up reading comics in the 90s was obviously probably a Tim Drake fan, or at least, had a good familiarity with the character. And then he ended up getting his own Teen Titans team that I talked about. So it was almost like a generational shift here. As the original Titans got older and got in their 20s, early 20s, they obviously needed a new Teen Titans group. So they got together, Tim Drake with Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl, Connor Kent as Superboy, and Bart Allen as the resident Kid Flash. And so yeah, you did kind of have that kind of generational shift. And obviously they had their own popularity. That Titans series ran 100 issues, which is a great run. So obviously these characters were popular. And I want to say that it kind of fell apart a little bit toward the end when we had things like Final Crisis and whatnot, leading into ultimately, which became Flashpoint, and then the reboot with the New 52. But even after the New 52, Tim was the leader of the group as Red Robin. Through a couple of short-lived Titans series that didn't quite click, and where he's with a younger Beast Boy, a younger Raven, who were de-aged in the New 52 continuity, and kind of partnered with. It seemed like the only continuity that kind of was the most consistent was Batman and Batman's world. Yeah, and everything was kind of like, adjusted to accommodate that timeline.
Yeah, and I think, Charles, just to kind of defend my old man grumpiness a little bit, I have a problem with people who do not embrace a change because they don't like where the story's going, just without even giving it a try.
Right.
And so what I found is, as you said, they keep changing for the sake of changing. Like, okay, time to reboot. Kind of come up with a new story, and it's like, why? What do you have to do that? So,
well, generally it's because of sales,
right?
And you have to remember that DC Comics is a business, and if the current version isn't quite being accepted, they try something else.
Yes.
Sometimes it doesn't work.
Yeah.
So they try again and again until it does work, or they kind of bench it for a while and let people kind of like, oh, hey, I wish they'd bring this back, and then they bring it back.
I think Jesse's point is, it doesn't matter what numbers on the cover as long as the story's there. Just do good stories.
Right. Yeah. Generally, if you have great stories with great art and strong characters that people like, you're going to do well. Generally.
Yeah.
Sometimes great books fall by the wayside because there's so many.
Yeah.
Right.
That's the other problem.
But by and large, usually the books that are worthy of continuing get a following, word of mouth and whatnot. People say, "Hey, you need to check this out," or "I recommend this."
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was just kind of like a more of it wasn't a creative high point, right? At this point.
So, you haven't shared what your thoughts on Mr. Todd.
Oh, Mr. Todd or Tim Drake?
I'm sorry, Tim Drake. Yes.
Yeah, Tim Drake. Tim Drake. I liked. I agree with you, Jesse. I think the way that they presented Tim Drake was a key reason why the character was successful. He wasn't obviously as antagonistic or obnoxious like Jason Todd, so he wasn't constantly rebelling. He was just like kind of like a puppy dog going like, okay, whatever you want me to do, Batman, I'll do it, and I'm just like geeking out over this. This is great. So as a result, he assimilated with the group, the Batman family, much more easily. And now I know recently, in the kind of rebirth era, Tim Drake has been having some kind of in like, I don't want to say struggling as a character, but he's been more like he's kind of hit a darker edge right now. In the rebirth era, he was kidnapped by the mysterious Mr. Oz, and ended up confronting his future self that was in this future Titans group called Titans of Tomorrow. And so it's essentially that Tim Drake was given this kind of evil future version of himself. And even though he's insistent about not wanting to go down this path, he's kind of revealed in the current run of Detective Comics to be something of a control freak. And it's that he sees himself as wanting to I don't know, micromanage everything.
Well, I think in the last issue of Detective Comics, he even tells Batman, he says, you know, I thought you were with me about building a system that's going to, you know, outlast you, you know, outlive you even.
Yeah. Yeah. And so consequently, I'm kind of curious to see where his character's going to go, but I want him to get out of this dark rut. And I'm hoping there will be some redemption for Tim Drake at the end of this, whenever it happens. I don't want to see the character go away on a dark note to kind of been benched for a while. I want to see him come through this on the other side and be a hero again.
Yes.
He's trying to be a hero right now, but he's essentially kind of like obsessing and burning himself out. He's stressed out and probably traumatized because of his experience being a captive of Mr. Oz.
Yeah.
And you think they're trying to like set him apart from, like, you know, he's not a Dick Grayson clone, and he's not Jason Todd. So
I think
give
so,
him his own identity.
I think so, or just, you know, they try to make him a more of a you know, like more of an intriguing character. You're an unpredictable character. Like he might straddle that gray line a little bit more like Jason does. So consequently, you don't know exactly which way he might go. So we'll see how it comes out. But so yeah, I just I like the character. Bottom line, and I want to see him do well. So,
and then there was one.
There was one, yeah. So Jesse's probably going to feel a little left out on this discussion, but hopefully he'll chime in a little bit because some of this was before the New 52. So obviously we're going to talk about Damian Wayne, the fifth Robin, because yes, I count. Spoiler, as
Stephanie
a Robin.
Brown, yeah.
Stephanie Brown as a Robin. I'm sorry. She was on Robin number 126 in a Robin costume. She's a Robin, as far as I'm concerned. I know some people like, but I'm not one of them. So, and they kind of erased her from the Robin continuity, I think, in the new timeline, the more condensed timeline. But I still count her as one. So Damian Wayne, the fifth Robin, created in 2006 by Grant Morrison and Adam Kubert. First appeared in Batman Volume 1, number 655. Joined the Teen Titans in Teen Titans Volume 3, number 88, back in 2011, just before the New 52 happened. And in his first appearance in this four-part storyline that ran from 655 to 658, we were introduced to Damian because, hey, as it turned out, Batman had a kid with Talia al Ghul, which old school fans kind of remembered from back in the day from the Batman Son of the Demon graphic novel. And Jesse, did you happen to read that graphic novel back then?
I did, and so it was not a surprise to me at all.
Yeah, I think it was more like Morrison kind of bringing this obscure tidbit and doing something with it.
Yeah, and it's one of those embracing the timey-wimey of comic book aging. So, you know, but yeah, I thought that was very cool. And I thought that the character was going to be pretty interesting. I'll stop there.
Oh, that's very ominous. Like, I thought it was going to be interesting, but ...
Yes.
Okay. Phil, what are your thoughts on the debut of Damian Wayne?
Well, yeah, I read that Son of the Demon story, and wasn't that originally they were like, oh, it's not, maybe it might not be in continuity, and then Morrison was just like, yeah, let's bring it in.
Well, I think it was one of those, and back then, this came out during the 80s, Son of the Demon. They didn't have Elseworlds back then. And Elseworlds was kind of set aside like, okay, the Elseworlds stories are not in continuity. But Son of the Demon was before that. It was never really classified in Elseworlds. So I think it was just more like, okay, it kind of just seemed like this story that never connected to anything in the monthly books. So I think Morrison thought, well, this might be interesting. And let's see where we can take this. Maybe Morrison had like an idea for like, hey, wouldn't it be interesting if Batman actually had a son? And then he knew about this story and probably connected the two, I'm guessing.
Yeah, but I mean, when Damian first appeared, I was kind of like, I'll see where this goes. But I think like where he really really the character shown through was the whole Batman Reborn thing when Dick Grayson was Batman.
Yes, that was a great run when in the Batman and Robin run. That was by Grant Morrison and Frank Quitely and a bunch of other artists. That was a great series. I really liked that series. And Dick Grayson, we kind of didn't touch on this during our Dick Grayson discussion, but I think Dick Grayson actually makes a really good Batman.
Oh yeah.
And Damian, I think this is where those two characters kind of first started working with one another, and Damian over time got this grudging respect for Grayson that that has kind of carried through to the current continuity, and that hasn't gone away. That they seem to like, because I don't think they've erased that, so therefore that bond is still there. And they basically have the big brother little brother relationship that him and Tim Drake used to have. Yeah. Like maybe it comes off feeling to me. It feels like that Grayson sometimes relates to Damian better than Batman does.
Oh yeah. They definitely hit on that when Bruce Wayne came back at that right before New 52. Yeah.
Yeah, because obviously Grayson isn't as uptight as Batman. So.
And he's been where Damian's at. He was Robin.
Right. So Damian ended up joining the Teen Titans, like I said, with number 88. This is back in 2011. Essentially, he was kind of brought on to shake things up because he wasn't really a teen at this point. I think he was still all of 10 years old at this stage, which kind of was kind of weird they'd be with a group called the Teen Titans. But I kind of like that because with Damian's personality being so abrasive, but it's more of like, hey, I know what I'm doing. All of you are idiots. Kind of like a Sherlock Holmes kind of attitude. A younger, brattier Sherlock Holmes. I kind of like the fact that, just everybody that works with Damian doesn't really know how to connect with him at first.
Well, because he's basically like an adult in a 10-year-old. Well, now he's 13, but he was basically an adult in a 10-year-old's body because he was trained from like the day he was born by the League of Assassins, so he never really had a child. Was allowed to be a child. Yeah,
exactly. So he's almost kind of like lost that. He didn't have that childhood growing up, and I think it's one of the things that's interesting. Jesse, what do you think about that?
I can't stand him. Whatever story I've read, you have to be likable. Now you can be a likable, unlikable, like House, the TV show. He was not likable, but you enjoyed watching him being grumpy or being unlikable.
I rate Damian with that. I see Damian as that House.
No, I find House. And I love, Sherlock Holmes. Whether it's Elementary or Sherlock. I love the idea that they're 3 or 4 steps ahead of everyone. He's just a brat. He's just a selfish, self-centered idiot. and I just can't stand him. And
that's why I think he works so well with Dick Grayson, because he needs that counterpoint, because that flipped the whole theme on its head. It was a lighter Batman and a darker Robin, but when Damian and Bruce are together, they're just like the same person, so it doesn't really work as well.
And I have and if you would say, if you said, hey Jesse, I really think you've sampled too small. It's the old argument. Well, you say you don't like cheesecake, or you don't like coleslaw. Well, that's because you've never had good coleslaw or good cheesecake,
right?
Fruitcake. But just the stories I've read,
right?
Catching him, I just cannot stand him. He is totally unlikable. I just roll my eyes at him and go, yeah, we get it. You're raised by assassins. You're meaner and tougher than the rest. Just shut the F up.
Well, what I would do on that strong note.
Yes, I'm sorry.
What I would do.
That's just my opinion.
You're perfectly entitled to your opinion. This is why we have this podcast.
I don't think I've ever heard Jesse get that fired up.
I know, he's dropping F-bombs. What's up with that?
Yeah.
No, I would recommend Batman and Robin, the new 52 series, actually, by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. It did a great job at humanizing Damian.
Okay.
They gave him a dog, an Ace the Bat Hound, and I don't know if you read the Batman and Robin series that we were talking about earlier, where Grayson's Batman, but this kind of followed up with that, and it showed the development of Bruce's, relationship with Damian, as a father and son, and I think it made Damian a much more sympathetic character, and who's got just a lot of underlying emotions that maybe he doesn't show to everyone, but he has a lot of hidden depth to him. And I thought that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, in spoiler alert, if you don't like anything else about that series, Jesse, they kill him off for a while.
But they bring him back. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that was actually, it was interesting to see that what happened after that. It was like this, there's like these requiem issues after Damian was killed. Really good stuff, in my opinion. So I would definitely recommend checking that out.
Oh, and Charles, did you read the Tim Seeley Nightwing stuff, like the Rebirth stuff?
Yes, I do. Yes.
He had a good arc in there with Dick and Damian. I thought that kind of humanized Damian also.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, so definitely. And right now he's Damian. They're in the series that's called Super Sons, where he's partnered with Superman's son, John Kent, and that has gone a long way because it's actually given Damian a best friend, and so it's kind of interesting that these two characters have it's almost like there's this really young generational version of the world's finest team.
Yeah, pick that up, but it's getting canceled too.
It is getting canceled, but I think the characters will still be around. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, I was a big fan of the before they had the what ifs. You had the imaginary stories, and they did have the Super Sons back in the 70s, I guess. Right.
So this is basically like an updated version of that.
Yeah. So that I think I might. In fact, I will check that out. Yeah, that'll be interesting because I like the concept. I'm always a fan that I think Batman and Superman should be friends. So I think that would be really interesting to see how they interact.
Yeah, and I believe that was also written by Tomasi. So
okay, good.
If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
And the Damian, obviously, he's a current leader of the Teen Titans group that's here in the Rebirth era. Had a little friction, of course, at first when he essentially kidnapped the various members of the Titans that he wanted. He essentially assembled his own team, kidnapped them to help him in this fight against his grandfather, Ra's al Ghul, and is slowly starting to win them over. So, and we'll see where that goes. But It's interesting, and I kind of like the current Teen Titans series. I'm enjoying it at the moment. Now, whether it continues or not, because I think they're kind of reorganizing some things, we'll find out. But for right now, I think it's pretty good.
Okay, good.
So, all right. So, anything else about the various Robins before we move on?
So, I think all three of us would give Dick Grayson as the top Robin.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Yes.
But the other three, and so I would think, just guessing, Jason Todd's 4. So, what flip Tim Drake and Damian? Who would be your 2? Which would be your 3?
I would go Tim as number 2, and then
Agreed.
Damian as number 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be me.
All right.
Although I must say that the current Red Hood series, I've been enjoying that.
Yeah, we should have brought that up. Now I see with with Jason being the Red Hood. So do you like him as the Red Hood?
I know like the New 52 stuff, some of that I could take or leave, but since
Right.
the Rebirth series, I've been enjoying that. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Yep. I'm currently reading that, but I know that obviously with things like the I don't know if you saw the Under the Red Hood animated series, because I actually read the original comics, and I thought that was actually a pretty good adaptation of that.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Yeah.
I think you had Jensen Ackles from Supernatural as Jason Todd, if I remember correctly.
He was. Yes.
Yep. So, all right. Anything else?
No, I can't think of anything.
Okay.
I thought you'd bring up that we were talking about this because they announced that they're going to have Jason Todd on.
Well, you got to be patient. I'm getting into that. I'm setting the table here. All right. So since Phil kind of blew my whole denouement, let's dive into the Titans Tower section, where we're going to talk about some news about the upcoming TV series Titans. And as Phil mentioned, one of the episodes we've got episode titles, or at least rumored episode titles. Nothing official yet, except for maybe the 5th episode, which is we know as the Doom Patrol because Jeff Johns Instagrammed or tweeted a picture of the script. But the 7th episode of Titans Tower is named Jason Todd, which I thought was rather timely that we're talking about Jason Todd right now. So. The other episode titles, episode 1 probably Titans or the pilot, depending on what they settle on. Episode 2 is titled Hawk and Dove. Episode 3 is Starfire. Episode 4 is Rachel, which I'm guessing is going to be a Raven episode. Rachel Roth, her current identity. Episode 5, the Doom Patrol, which you talked about. Episode 6 called The Messenger. I'm not quite sure what that's going to be about, so that'll be intriguing. And I think episode 6 and 7 are 2-parter, based on some reports from the filming. And I'm going to get in that a little bit later. But so thought that was interesting. Now we also got the casting of the Doom Patrol since the last time we recorded. And Jesse, I don't know if you've been keeping up on this or not.
Well, there is this wonderful blog called Damn Good Coffee and Hot that is keeping me abreast of that.
I'm trying my best. Too. So we actually have the casting of the Doom Patrol, which is great because finally a live action version of the Doom Patrol, and I'm really geeking out about this because I'm a big Doom Patrol fan. We've got an actor named Bruno Bashir, I believe. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Bichir as the chief. Dr. Niles Calder. He's a Mexican actor, about 50 years old. Mostly done some Mexican films and whatnot, but he was also in the Netflix series Narcos. I don't know if either of you have watched that series. I haven't, so I don't know if he's any good or not.
Linda has, and she loves it.
Yeah, he plays a character named Fernando Duque, or Duque. And so I don't watch the series, so I can't tell you. But he was a few U.S. films, but nothing really notable. But in the Titans version, the chief is described as, quote, a pioneer in medical science, searching the world over for those on the edge of death in need of a miracle. Brilliant but controversial, Dr. Calder will stop at nothing to help those he believes are in need, including his collection of strange heroes known as the Doom Patrol. So we'll see about the Chief. April Bowlby is going to be Elastigirl. No, not the Elastigirl from The Incredibles. This one came first. Rita Farr, the original Doom Patrol Elastigirl, before The Incredibles ripped off her name. She's best known as Candy on the CBS sitcom 2.5 Men. And I guess she played a character named Stacey Barrett on Lifetime series Drop Dead Diva. I didn't watch either of those, so I can't attest to either of that. Either of you a 2.5 Men fan?
I've seen reruns.
So are you familiar with the character?
No.
No?
I think if it's who I'm thinking, and
she's very buxom. I think she was Charlie Sheen's girlfriend.
Or I think she might have been. I don't know if she dated the one who played his brother for a time. The joke was she was like a lot younger than him or something. Yeah.
That's probably her then. She's also been on episodes of The Big Bang Theory, Mom, Psych, CSI, How I Met Your Mother, and CSI New York. And Elastigirl is described as an actress on the rise. Rita Farr was exposed to a toxic gas that altered her cellular structure, which in the comics allows her to expand or shrink her body at will. Longing for the days of old, Rita finds a place for herself among the Doom Patrol. And as we know, at least from the comics, Elastigirl is the foster mother of Gar Logan, a.k.a. Beast Boy.
Yes.
So I'm presuming that'll be the connection. We have Jake Michaels as Robot Man. I'm really geeked about seeing Robot Man. I hope they do a good version of this. I don't know. Have to be really good makeup, I'm guessing, or CGI or something. Jake Michaels previously appeared on episodes of Designated Survivor, Killjoy, Saving Hope, Suits, 11/22/63, Lost Girl Nikita, and Transported the series. And Robot Man is described as a former race car driver. Cliff Steele was in a horrific accident that left his body uninhabitable. Cliff's brain was saved by the mysterious Dr. Nels Calder, and he lives on in a powerful robotic body.
Nice.
Yeah. So
Charles, would you feel cheated if they did a thing where it's like he looks human, but all his internal structure is robotic?
It wouldn't surprise me if they did that, but I'm hoping they don't. To save budget is possible, but they've been so good with the couple of costumes we've seen. I'm really hoping that they go the extra mile on Robot Man. But who knows? We'll see what we get. Dwayne Murphy is going to be playing Negative Man, and Dwayne Murphy is a Caribbean-born Canadian actor, probably best known as Sean Duncan on the FX series The Strain, and he also played Captain Maddox that was recently on Star Trek Discovery. So if you're a Star Trek Discovery fan, he's also been in episodes of Suits, The Mist, Killjoys, Lost Girl, Nikita. I'm seeing a trend here. Warehouse 13 and Degrassi, The Next Generation, if you're a Degrassi fan from back in the day. Negative Man's described as a pilot in the Air Force. Larry Trainer crashed his plane and was exposed to a mysterious negative energy. Wrapped in bandages to protect those around him, Larry struggles with this new strange power. So
Nice.
that's the Doom Patrol, and I cannot wait. And especially knowing that's written by Jeff Johns, who is a big Doom Patrol geek. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. Now, we do have some speculated cast, and this is what kind of ties into our Robin discussion here. There's been an actor named Curran Walters, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, but he's been rumored for Jason Todd. And primarily because there was some filming recently in Toronto, and someone, I guess, that has really close ties to the production because he's got a lot of behind-the-scenes photos, has been posting a bunch of spoilery stuff about the production. Now, he says he saw Curran Walters in costume, and apparently this is during the filming of episodes 6 and 7, And like I said, episode 7 is named Jason Todd. So if you connect the dots, it seems pretty likely. And if you've seen a photo of the guy, which I posted on Damn Good Coffee, he kind of looks like Jason Todd. So, Phil, have you seen a picture of this Kieran Walters?
If it's the one I thought I saw one a while ago, and yeah, I mean he could pull off a passable Jason Todd.
Yeah. How about you, Jesse? Do you see a picture?
Yeah, I think absolutely.
Yep, I think so too. So we'll see. He has kind of a smarmy look about him, so with a punchable face. So that's perfect for Jason Todd, right?
Yeah. So I guess the speculation is that because I guess in the beginning of the series, Dick Grayson is Robin, and then that we're going to get the switch over. But do you think we're going to get a lot of Batman, or is it all just going to be like, them talking about Batman?
That's a good question. We might get Batman mentioned but not seen.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm hoping at some point we see him, but
is it like the Clark Kent emailing thing on Supergirl? Dick Grayson will get emails from Batman every episode.
Yes.
You're fired.
Like Dick. Alfred says hi.
Yeah.
I don't know. So we'll see where that goes. Interestingly, if you kind of look on this guy Cal Puth, his Twitter account, I kind of scrolled up a little bit to something more recent and noticed that on March 12th of this year, 2018, he posted that some casting information mentioning that Melody Johnson as Nuclear Mom, Jenny Ross as Nuclear Sis, and Logan Thompson as Nuclear Biff. Now, who are these characters? Well, some really obscure villains in the DC Comics universe by the name of the Nuclear Family. If you're an old school Outsiders fan like I am, these characters first appeared in the first couple issues of the first Outsiders series that followed Batman and the Outsiders. This is the deluxe version of that, and back in the 80s. And so I'm thinking, they're going to bring the Nuclear Family in this series. So obviously, I don't think anybody's doing a thing with these characters. So this might be kind of cool. We'll see how this goes. But these are very 50s prototype characters that turned out to be androids, and I'm kind of curious to see how that plays. We'll see if it's played for cheese or what, but that was really interesting. So we'll see. Jesse, were either of you a fan of the Outsiders back in the day?
Yeah, I always loved the joke that Batman as the Dark Knight, the lone, creature of the night, except is a member of Justice League, except a member of the Outsiders, and has a random superhero join him every month for an adventure going to Brave and Bold. I always liked that joke. But yes, I like the Outsiders.
Yeah, they're almost experiencing like a minor comeback right now, because if you watch the series Black Lightning, there are a ton of Outsiders references on Black Lightning. Yes. And I don't think they're done yet. So so it's kind of cool, because I'm a big Outsiders fan. And obviously they had a nice crossover with the Titans as well. You see how I brought that all together?
Absolutely.
Think we're going to get Black Lightning and the Outsiders?
I would hope so, because if you think about it, Black Lightning, if they've got Thunder, they presumably have Grace. All Grace needs to get some superpowers, but and that's 3 Outsiders members right there. So maybe if they bring in like Metamorpho, which could be cool. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. We don't know who, but it seems like they're going to be, because they're giving Jefferson's other daughter, Jennifer, her lightning powers now. So maybe she'll join the Outsiders. Who knows? But I think it would be kind of cool if they did. All right. Anything else about the various Robins before we kind of wrap things up?
Well, when you mentioned about we were talking about Dick Grayson and Nightwing and how it came from the Kryptonian legend, do you think they're going to do anything with the Kryptonian Nightwing on Krypton?
I don't know. I know they're going to be doing stuff with Kandor, so hopefully That'd be kind of cool if they did the Nightwing and Flamebird legend there.
Yeah, it would.
That would be very cool. I
know Jesse would geek out about that.
I would. I'd be like, okay, I'd be emailing, okay, I have to be on Phantom Zone this week. I have to be on Phantom Zone this week. Phil, I've got to be on Capes of Lunatics. I've got to be Capes of Lunatics.
Okay, that's fine, yeah.
I keep waiting for Jesse to start up the Krypton podcast.
All my Springsteen fans are like, why is this episode devoted to this Krypton?
To the music.
But I think it's kind of ironic because you devote every other podcast to Bruce Springsteen. Oh, see what I did there? Just kidding. Yeah. All right. Before we kind of wrap things up, I just want to give a quick mention that I got to meet Cyborg, y'all.
Yay.
At the Wizard World Cleveland convention. Now, obviously, this is Cyborg from the Justice League movie, Ray Fisher, but it's kind of like the first big screen version of Cyborg, so I think that's kind of cool. Obviously, being a Titans fan, I was geeking hard about this, and I got to, thankfully, Ray Fisher was very nice, spent some time talking to me. We talked about how he met Marv Wolfman, Cyborg's creator, at the Justice League premiere, and the two talked about the character, and I guess Marv gave Ray his official okie dokie seal of approval, which is kind of cool. And I actually kind of like Ray's performance as Cyborg in Justice League. One of the few highlights of Justice League, depending on your point of view. But yeah, I kind of liked it, and like I said, Ray was a really nice guy, so I want to thank him for his time because he was great.
Yeah, he seemed good in the movie. I just wish they would have given him like more, more to do.
Yeah, at least they had his father Silas, which I was glad that that was there. So, so other than that, Jesse, I guess we should probably tell everybody where they can find us on the interwebs. So, you want to run that down?
Yeah, as if I had it written down, and I
thought you would. You don't have it. You're not prepared for class, young man.
No, I didn't know I was supposed to do that on the agenda.
You don't have to. We don't. Okay. We don't really have an agenda for this, but
yes. So we are.
I can do it if you want.
Yes, please, because you have it all written down.
Yeah, I do. All right. My copious notes. All right. So, if you'd like to drop us a line, we'd love to hear from you. Give us your thoughts about the Robins, or maybe about the Doom Patrol casting, or other things that are coming up on the TV show, which is at least one more month closer to finally happening on the DC digital service, the still untitled DC digital service, although I know what the name is.
We don't have a name. We don't have a date yet, do we?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay.
So hopefully soon. But we just know it's supposed to be sometime in 2018.
Yes.
I'm thinking September. Okay. I'm guessing. At least let's go for that. That's because that's when Doctor Who comes back and all the other shows come back. So
yes, where it'll be incredibly difficult for us to find time to watch everything.
Yes. Yeah. Why not? So if you want to tell it to Titan Talk, reach us at Titan Talkcast on the Gmail at gmail.com. Or you can reach us on the Twitter machine at Titan Talkcast. We'd love to hear from you. Or you can drop us a line on our Facebook account, Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast. We'd love to get some likes and follows there as well. And please tell your friends about us. And also, if you would, rate us a review and rate us on iTunes. Hopefully you like the show. We've gotten some compliments from people, but always would love to hear more of it, hear more what you think about how we're doing. And please drop us a line or, post something. Let us know. We'd love to hear your feedback. And Jesse, where can they find you on the interwebs before we go to Phil?
You can find me at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook. We are currently Titan Talk, the Titans Podcast on iTunes, and we have no reviews and not enough ratings to display an average for this podcast.
We need at least 5, guys.
Yes, so please.
Come on, people.
Yeah,
give us
come
on. At least 5.
Yeah,
you can do
come
5.
on. I mean,
help us out.
Yeah. So you can hear Charles and I talk about the wonderful world of Doctor Who. on Next Stop Everywhere. And as Charles slyly mentioned, I do talk a little Bruce Springsteen on Set Lusting Bruce. And so you can find that on the Southgate Media Network as well. Phil, how about you?
Well, speaking of Southgate Media Group shows, I do, well, basically we're kind of like two podcasts now, the Capes and Lunatics and the Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks, because we have so much stuff we don't have room for it. Or if you want to find us all and everything in one spot, we're on YouTube at Capes and Lunatics, but follow us on Twitter at Capes Lunatics and at CL Sidekicks, especially that Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks. We have a new show coming this week, the Quantum Zone, a Quasar podcast. I know it's Marvel, but...
Yep. Which doesn't sound at all like the Fandom Zone podcast, but, you know.
Which doesn't sound like the Phantom Zone at all.
Well, you know, it's a pun on the Phantom Zone. So, yeah.
I know.
All right. So
hey, listen to them all.
No, seriously, give all the Capes and Lunatics and Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast a listen, because Phil's great. He helps us out on our various podcasts, and he's always great to talk to. We love having you here. Thanks so much for being our first guest here on Titan Talk.
Yeah, that was great.
Oh, I love comics. I love talking to you guys.
And thanks for talking Robins with us. We really appreciate it. So, yeah, give Phil some love on the interwebs. I'm sure as he builds his Capes and Lunatics empire. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, because he needs a hobby.
Yeah.
Dire, desperate need of a hobby. As for me, of course, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagram, Google Plus for all you crazy kids on the Google Plus. Shout out to Karen. And Facebook, of course, Charles Skaggs, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the Titan stuff that we talk about here on Titan Talk and more. All kinds of comic book sci-fi goodness. And my other three podcasts that I do, the aforementioned Next Stop Everywhere with Jesse, or the Phantom Zone podcast that Phil is kind enough to join us on occasionally, and will be doing so, I'm sure, in the near future. Where we talk about all the comic book shows they're on for the week here and there. And then Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast they do with Zan Sprouse, wife of comic book artist Chris Sprouse, where we discuss all things Twin Peaks. And really appreciate all the kind words we're getting from people about Titan Talk. I know that I'm in the process of trying to line up some special DC Comics people, maybe. That could happen. So we'll see.
When we're done, let me hang on a minute. After we're done, I might have a name for you.
Ooh, excellent!
Nice.
Thank you, Phil. Cheers, Phil.
And we're also trying to coordinate Blast from the Past. We've had several former Titan Talkers say they want to join us, and so we're trying to make that happen as well.
Yep. So yeah, definitely we're welcoming that because we'd love to kind of run down memory lane a little bit as we kind of try to build up excitement for the upcoming Titan series, which again hopefully will be sometime around September, and we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, as the news comes out, obviously we're going to talk about it right here on Titan Talk. So Jesse, any final words?
I just thank you for listening. Send us feedback on what you want us to talk about. And I want to say again that, Phil, it was great to have you on there.
Yes.
Every time we get to podcast together, I have a blast. So thank you for joining us.
Oh,
yes,
thank you.
So
I love talking to you guys and talking comics, and I always have a great time also.
Good.
Great. Glad to hear it. So you're welcome back anytime.
Thank you.
Otherwise, thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you next time right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Remember, Titans together, and we'll see you next time. Right,
Bye.
Jesse?
Yes,
Bye.
indeed. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, everyone. This is a little post-credit scene. But Charles and I and Phil wanted to send out good thoughts and blessings to the podcast mom, Karen. She recently lost her mom, and we all know how difficult that can be. And, Karen was the first person who thought I would be a good podcaster and asked me years ago, hey, I'm going to do a Castle podcast. Do you want to join me? And she picked me to do the Farscape podcast. So she has a very special place in my heart. Or you guys could blame her for all of this. But Karen, we love you. We are thinking good thoughts for you. And if you need anything at all, just reach out to us. And remember, she's always with you. Charles?
Yeah, I obviously the sentiment is couldn't be better expressed in as far as I'm concerned, because the Karen is essentially my brain soulmate, because we if you've listened to us on the Phantom Zone podcast, we share a brain. It's a very disturbed brain. It's a dark place, but I care so much about her, and I know that she's had such a rough go of everything between health problems and moving and just everything. And then this is just, money. And then this is the latest setback. And I feel so strongly for her, and I wish her nothing but the best. So yeah, she definitely has all my thoughts and prayers as well. Just we'll be keeping you in our thoughts, Karen. And just know that we love you.
Good.
And obviously, I don't know her as well as you two, but I just wanted to offer my condolences and my thoughts and prayers are with you, Supergirl, Southgate Media Group, or
Very
podcasting
nice.
in general.
Yeah, so look for a link. If there's something as a listener you can do, we'll certainly let you know. But for now, life is precious. Go hug someone you care about and tell them you love them. Talk to you soon.
I totally agree.
All right.